The wind cut through the cracks in the kitchen wall like it had a grudge. Outside, the thermometer read 4 degrees. Inside, the family of 7 sat around a table with one bowl of cornmeal mush between them. The father had been laid off from the rail yard 11 weeks earlier. The mother had sold her wedding band the Tuesday before. And the pantry, that long cedar pantry her own mother had built in 1911, held exactly 13 items. 13. That was it. That was what stood between them and starving through a Pennsylvania winter, but they made it. Every one of them made it to spring, and the reason they made it is something almost nobody talks about anymore, because the 13 things they leaned on weren't fancy, weren't rare, and weren't expensive. You can still walk into a Walmart this afternoon and buy every single one for under $5 a piece. I'm going to show you what they were, and I'm going to save the strangest one for last, because it comes straight out of a 1934 Department of Agriculture bulletin that most folks have never laid eyes on, and it still works in any kitchen in America today. My grandmother used to keep a tin under her sink that rattled when you moved it. I never knew what was in there until I was about 30 years old, and when she finally showed me, I laughed because I thought it was junk. Turns out that tin was the whole reason her family ate during the worst years of the 1930s. I'll get to what was in it. Stay with me. The first thing on that pantry shelf was a sack of plain white flour, 25 pounds of it, bought for pennies on the dollar at the mill outside town. Now today, you can get a 5-pound bag at Walmart for about $2.40. That alone, mixed with water and a pinch of salt, becomes hardtack, the same hardtack that kept Union soldiers alive and kept Depression families alive after them. Bake it twice at low heat, and it lasts for years. I've personally eaten a piece my uncle baked in 1982, still crunched, still filled me up. The grandmother on that Pennsylvania farm made what she called pan biscuits, just flour, water, lard, and salt, cooked on top of a wood stove in a cast iron skillet. One sack fed her family for almost 6 weeks. The second thing was salt, a blue cardboard box of plain iodized salt. Costs about $1 today, but here's what people forget. Salt wasn't seasoning back then. Salt was the difference between meat that lasted the winter and meat that rotted by Tuesday. The family I'm telling you about, the father trapped rabbits and the occasional possum, and the mother cured them in a salt brine in the cellar. A single box of salt preserved enough wild meat to get them through January and February. The University of Georgia Extension Office still publishes the old salt-to-meat ratios. 1 pound of salt to every 10 pounds of meat. That's it. That's the formula our great-grandparents knew by heart, and we somehow forgot. The third item was lard. Pure rendered pork fat in a tin. You can find it at Walmart for about $4 a tub, sitting right next to the vegetable shortening that replaced it. And that replacement, that switch from lard to vegetable oil, was not an accident. It happened because a soap company in Cincinnati had a problem. They had a warehouse full of cottonseed oil, a byproduct from cotton mills that had no real use, and they needed to sell it. So they hydrogenated it, slapped a clean white label on it, and spent millions convincing American housewives that the lard their mothers cooked with was somehow dirty. That was Procter & Gamble. Crisco came out in 1911. By 1950, they had almost completely pushed lard out of the American kitchen, and what did we lose? We lost a fat that stores for 2 years without refrigeration, that fries crisper than any oil ever made, and that costs a fraction of what those fancy oils cost today. The Pennsylvania family used lard for everything: frying, baking, sealing the tops of canning jars, even rubbed on cracked hands in winter. One tin lasted them 2 months. The fourth thing on the shelf was dried beans, pinto mostly, in a cloth sack. Walmart sells a 1-pound bag for about $1.70. Soak them overnight, simmer them low and slow with a piece of salt pork or a ham bone, and you have protein that fills a working man's belly for less than 10 cents a serving. The mother in that house kept a pot of beans going almost constantly on the back of the stove, adding water, adding scraps, never letting it fully empty. The old folks called it perpetual bean pot, and it was how poor families in Appalachia and the Ozarks kept hot food available at any hour of the day or night. The fifth was cornmeal, yellow stone ground if they could get it, $2 at Walmart for a 2-pound bag. Cornmeal mush in the morning, cornbread at noon, fried cornmeal cakes at supper, the same grain, 3 different ways. Cornmeal was so central to survival in the South that the WPA workers who interviewed Depression survivors in the late 1930s, the same project that gave us the famous slave narratives, recorded hundreds of families who said they ate cornmeal in some form every single day for years on end. And they were healthy. They were thin, but they were healthy. The sixth item was rolled oats. A canister cost the Pennsylvania family 11 cents in 1933. Today, a tube of plain rolled oats at Walmart runs about $3.50 and feeds a family for over 2 weeks if you stretch it. But here's what most folks don't know about oats. The mother used to grind a portion of them in a hand mill and use the oat flour to thicken soups and stretch the wheat flour when it got low. 1 canister, used right, did the work of 3. The seventh thing was sugar. A 2-pound paper sack, about $1.90 today. Now you might think sugar is a luxury, and in some ways it was, but in a Depression kitchen, sugar wasn't dessert. Sugar was preservation. The mother used it to put up fruit she gathered from wild trees, apples and pears, and the occasional cluster of blackberries, simmered down with sugar into preserves that lasted in glass jars for 2 and 3 years on a cool cellar shelf. The Ball Brothers Canning Company, which started publishing the Ball Blue Book in 1909, laid out the exact sugar to fruit ratios our grandmothers memorized. Most modern people have never even held a copy. Now, here's where the story gets harder. By the 3rd week of January, the snow had buried the chicken coop. The father came in from checking his trap line with empty hands 4 days running. The youngest child, a girl of about 6, had developed a cough that wouldn't quit. And the mother went to her pantry, looked at what was left, and made a decision that would have shocked any modern American. She started rationing by weight, not by meal, by weight. She had read somewhere in a county extension pamphlet that an adult could survive on about 2,000 calories a day, and a child on about 1,200. She weighed out portions on a small kitchen scale, the same kind you can buy at Walmart today for under $5, and she rationed every single item in that pantry to make it last exactly until April 15th, the day she calculated the first wild greens would come up in the south-facing meadow. She made it to April 12th. 3 days early, nobody died. Nobody got rickets, nobody got scurvy, and the reason was items 8, 9, and 10 on that pantry shelf. Item 8 was a small brown bottle of cod liver oil. Sounds awful. Tastes worse. But a single tablespoon a day was the difference between healthy children and sick ones during the winter months when there was no sunshine and no fresh vegetables. The American Medical Association actually endorsed cod liver oil for children in a 1932 report, calling it one of the most reliable sources of vitamin D and vitamin A available to a poor family. A bottle costs about $4.50 at Walmart right now. One bottle, used a teaspoon at a time, lasts a family of 5 through an entire winter. Item 9 was apple cider vinegar, the real kind, with the cloudy mother floating in the bottom. About $3 a bottle. The mother used it for everything: a spoonful in water to settle stomachs, a dash in the bean pot to brighten the flavor, a rinse for her daughter's hair, a wipe for the cutting board to keep it from souring, and mixed with honey. When they had honey, it was the cough syrup that finally broke that little girl's cough by the end of January. Item 10 was baking soda, a yellow box that cost almost nothing then and costs about $1 now. Toothpaste, scouring powder, heartburn relief, leavening for biscuits, fire extinguisher when the lard caught flame on the stove. There has never been a more useful dollar spent in any American kitchen than the dollar spent on a box of baking soda. The Arm & Hammer Company has been printing the same 100 uses on the side of that box since the 1860s, and we still don't read it. Now, I told you I would get to what was in my grandmother's tin under the sink. I'm getting there. But first, I want to talk to those of you who are sitting in a small house, maybe an apartment, maybe a condo, thinking, this is all wonderful, but you don't have a cellar, and you don't have a meadow, and you don't have a wood stove. I hear you. So listen close. You can do every single thing that Pennsylvania family did inside an ordinary modern kitchen this week with no special equipment and no permission from anybody. A dark closet kept between 50 and 70 degrees will preserve flour, beans, cornmeal, and oats for years if you put them in clean glass jars with the lids screwed tight. The back corner of the bottom shelf of a closet, away from any heat source, behaves almost exactly like a 1933 root cellar. Lard, once opened, keeps in any cabinet for 6 months and in the refrigerator for 2 years. A windowsill that gets 4 hours of sunlight will sprout enough alfalfa or mung beans in a mason jar to give you fresh greens in February for about 30 cents a week. That's the existing home version. That's what my own daughter does in her apartment in Cleveland. No permits, no contractor, no land. Just the same knowledge that family in Pennsylvania used, applied to 4 walls and a closet. Item 11 on their pantry shelf was honey. A small jar, dark amber, bought from a beekeeper down the road for 50 cents. Honey at Walmart today runs about $4 for a 12-ounce squeeze bottle. But here is what the modern grocery store will never tell you. Honey, real honey, never spoils. Archaeologists have opened sealed jars from Egyptian tombs 3,000 years old and found the honey inside still edible. One jar in your pantry today will outlive you, will outlive your children, and will be perfectly good when your grandchildren find it. Item 12 was black tea. Loose leaf in a tin, about $3 at Walmart today. Tea was medicine. Tea was warmth. Tea was something to put in front of a guest when you had nothing else to offer. The mother in that Pennsylvania kitchen made 1 pot of tea every afternoon, and she reused the same leaves 3 times before throwing them out. A 1/4 pound of tea lasted that family from Thanksgiving to Easter. Which brings me to item 13, the one in my grandmother's tin, the one I laughed at when I was 30 years old. Powdered milk. That's it. That was the whole secret. A box of plain non-fat dry milk powder, the kind that sits on the bottom shelf at Walmart for about $4.70, mostly ignored, mostly forgotten. My grandmother had 3 boxes of it in that tin under her sink, and she rotated them every 2 years. Now you might be thinking, powdered milk? That's hardly a survival item? But this is where that 1934 Department of Agriculture bulletin comes in, the one I promised you at the start. The bulletin was titled, and I'll get this right, it was issued by the Bureau of Home Economics, and it laid out exactly how A Depression family was supposed to stretch a single pound of powdered milk to feed 5 people for a full week. You mix it with water at half strength for drinking, full strength for cooking, and the leftover thick paste at the bottom of the bowl gets stirred into bread dough to add protein and make the loaf rise higher. 1 pound, 5 people, 7 days for about $1.20 in 1934 money. And here is the part that the dairy industry, specifically the National Dairy Council and the fluid milk lobby that worked alongside it, spent decades burying after the war. Powdered milk, stored cool and dry in a sealed container, is good for 25 years. 25. I'm not making that number up. The Utah State University Extension Service tested powdered milk samples stored in number 10 cans at room temperature and found them safe, nutritious, and usable at the quarter-century mark. The fluid milk industry did not want American families to know this because every box of powdered milk in a pantry was a gallon of fresh milk not bought that week. So the marketing pushed fresh, pushed cold, pushed delivery, and the humble brown box that saved 100,000 families during the Depression got pushed to the bottom shelf where almost nobody looks anymore. That Pennsylvania mother used powdered milk to make a custard with 2 eggs, a half cup of sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla, and that custard was the birthday treat for every child in that house for the entire decade of the 1930s. The recipe came out of a church cookbook, printed in Scranton in 1929. The mother kept that cookbook on top of her pantry until the day she died in 1971, and her granddaughter has it now in a kitchen in Ohio, still in use, still making custard out of powdered milk for great-grandchildren who have no idea they're eating the same thing that kept their family alive 90 years ago. 13 items. Every one of them under $5 at Walmart this afternoon. Total cost for the whole pantry, in modern money, about $36. That's it. That's what stood between a family of 7 and a Pennsylvania winter in 1933, and that's what could stand between any of us and whatever hard time comes next. You didn't lose this knowledge. It was taken from you, taken by soap companies that wanted to sell you oil instead of lard. Taken by dairy lobbies that wanted you buying fresh instead of stocking dry. Taken by 100 clean white labels that convinced your mother her own mother was old-fashioned. But you just took it back. Right here, right now. In the last 15 minutes, you are the grandchild of people who survived things that would break most folks today. And the pantry they built is still buildable on any income, in any home, in any town in America. Tell me which of those 13 items your own grandmother kept. I want to read every single comment. Was it the lard tin, the blue salt box, the powdered milk under the sink like my grandmother had? Drop it below. Tell the story. Somebody else reading needs to hear it. If you want to keep recovering what was taken from your family, stay with us. There's a whole generation of knowledge waiting to come home. And next time, I'm going to show you the one thing that same Pennsylvania family did with a wool blanket and a brick that cut their heating bill to almost nothing, and why the power company in their county tried to make sure nobody else ever found out about it.